Joining us now is Laura Jarrett, senior legal correspondent for NBC News. Laura, great to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Of course.
What do you make of this? Mike Pence has been an interesting character. He did talk about it in his book. He does make speeches about how history's going to judge Donald Trump. Feels like a guy who wants to say something, and yet he's a guy who's been fighting the subpoena.
Obviously, politically, it's tricky for him to be seen as complying with the subpoena. By all accounts, he believes that he has a constitutional right to some immunity as it relates to his role on January 6th. That had been sort of a novel legal claim, an untested one. There was a lot of debate among lawyers about whether or not it would work. The judge seems to agree with it in principle, but the victory is almost ephemeral for him because the real heart of what the special counsel wants is probing at Trump's intent.
Yes.
And all of his efforts to try to obstruct and overturn the 2020 election. So to the extent that he can now probe at their conversations leading up to January 6th, all of that is fair game.
Because Mike Pence says, I'm not compelled to testify about things I was doing as the president of the Senate. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like that's what Jack Smith wants to know about. He wants to know about the conversations on January 5th and before that happened. And Mike Pence writes about and talks about, in fact, I think we've got it. Maybe we don't. Maybe I was just reading about it. But he talks about the fact that he had a tense conversation with Donald Trump on January 5th, and he said he does not believe it's within his power to do what Trump wanted him to do.
Yeah, and specifically the meeting that happens on January 4th in the Oval Office with Trump and John Eastman, this lawyer who sort of cooks up the blueprint, if you will, about how to actually overturn the election and overturn the people's will. And Pence's role in that is critical because they're trying to convince Pence, you have the power to actually not certify the votes. Pence is saying, I don't have that power.
Right.
Everyone's looked into it and I don't have that. Now the special counsel gets to ask on the stand, or his prosecutors do, exactly what did the former president say in response? Right. And all of the machinations behind that now gets to come out. Again, critical sort of to the key inquiry of what were Trump's intentions in trying to stop the election.
And again, there's a lot of public evidence about this. Judge Michael Ludick has been very frank about the fact that Pence's lawyer called him several times and said he needs cover. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't believe he can do it, but he needs an authority like you to go out there and say this is not right. And Michael Ludick put out some tweets, and history was made on that. So I wonder, is this just because Jack Smith's got a probe and has to get things on the record under oath? Because Jack Smith and everybody else kind of knows what Mike Pence was thinking about what Donald Trump wanted to
I think it's very different to put someone in front of a grand jury under oath and be able to go a little bit deeper. I mean, Pence has offered a fair amount in terms of his reflections, but he hasn't offered as much about what did Trump say in response and sort of what did all the other aides say? What were all the other pressure campaigns and points of pressure on you other than, you know, just your own reflections?
We know Pence's side of it. Let's talk about the New York grand jury. We do not believe that they are going to vote, or at least we don't know, but with that, as it stands, we don't think there's something coming.
We don't believe they're meeting tomorrow, which is interesting.
Right. So what do you think's happening? We know that David Pecker, who was the guy in charge of the National Enquirer, we know what he's said about this in the past. He was called back. He testified again. Any idea what's going on here?
Curious why he would be called back so late in the game. I think some have speculated about whether he almost served as a rebuttal witness to Robert Costello, who we saw go in last week, who was put forth as Trump's essentially in his stead, in his shoes, as a defense witness, trying to discredit Michael Cohen's credibility. Obviously, Cohen and Pecker have a number of important conversations specifically about this hush money scheme and all the payments. Unclear, obviously, what Pecker said. We don't have that reporting, but the timing is interesting, and it's unclear whether this is actually a delay that we're seeing right now, or maybe this was always part of the process. The only reason we thought that this was sort of the
Donald Trump tweeted it.
Well, not just that, but really it was the fact that his lawyers were offered the opportunity to come in, have your client testify. That's not something you see until the very end. So that was really the tell. The tweet and the post was sort of him sort of putting his own sort of spin on the timetable, but that was never sort of a realistic thing because we had no reporting.
So we could be on the timeline that was
exactly. We just don't yet know, I think, enough about what exactly is going on in that grand jury room.
Well, we're a little smarter for having you tell us about it. Thank you, Laura. Good to see you.
Anytime.
Laura Jarrett is NBC News senior legal correspondent.